Good morning. I want to talk a few minutes this morning about giving our best to the Master. We're going to be reading a passage from Mark 14, verses 3 through 9. And being in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at the table, a woman came having an alabaster flask of very costly oil of spikenard. Then she broke the flask and poured it on his head. But there were some who were indignant among themselves and said, "Why was this fragrant oil wasted? For it might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor." And they criticized the woman sharply. But Jesus said, "Let her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always, and whenever you wish you may do them good. But me you do not have always. She has done what she could. She has come beforehand to anoint my body for burial. Assuredly, I say to you, wherever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told as a memorial to her." In John chapter 12, this same story is told. In it, the woman who poured the oil on Jesus was Mary, the sister of Lazarus, and Martha. In John's account, the oil is poured on Jesus' feet. These two accounts are the same story, told by two different writers, two different witnesses. This is not to be confused with the story in Luke chapter 7 where it says a sinful woman came and poured oil on Jesus' feet. That was in the presence of a Pharisee. That was another event. That woman was seeking forgiveness from Jesus, and she was weeping as she anointed Jesus' feet. In this passage we just read, Mary is focused on Jesus alone. It's not about what he can do for her. It's a recognition of who he is. It's not her saying, "Lord, I'll do this for you. You do something for me." It wasn't like that. Mary was devoted to Jesus. We remember in the story in John, I think it is, where when Jesus went to visit Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, Jesus was sitting in a room teaching and speaking, and while Martha was more concerned about getting the food ready, Mary was sitting at Jesus' feet. She wanted to take in every word that he said. She loved Jesus. She thought it was more important to sit at his feet and listen than to do anything else. So what she did in this passage in Mark is a big deal. This oil was expensive. Historians and Bible commentators say that this oil may have been handed down from generation to generation, from mother to daughter. The best oil or ointment was preserved in alabaster. It says it was in an alabaster flask. The Greek word alabastron or alabastos, and I'm no Greek expert, this is what my commentary says, meant a stone casket or vase. Alabaster is a mineral or rock that was soft and could be carved into a container like a vase. And that's what this oil was in. It would be used to store something precious. You would not use alabaster to store something ordinary. So we know that this was a very expensive sacrifice that this woman made. So also in Jesus' time, when a guest arrived for a meal, it was customary, if you had servants, that they would wash the people's feet when they entered. And it was also customary to put a dab of oil on their head, a dab of fragrant oil, just as a courtesy in that day. So here, Mary went much further than that. She just didn't put a little dab on there. She poured the entire contents on him. And imagine that the entire room, the entire house where he was would have been filled with the fragrance of this oil. And commentators say, think about this. Jesus just went into Jerusalem as a king. He should be anointed. She was showing him reverence. She didn't say anything when she poured the contents of this alabaster box or flask on the head of Jesus. She didn't come in and announce and say, "Look, I'm going to do this. I want you all to watch." She didn't explain why she did it. She just did it. Charles Spurgeon says, "If we could all do more and talk less, it might be a blessing, at least to ourselves, maybe to others. Let us labor in our service for the Lord to be more and more hidden. As much as the proud desire to catch the eye of man, let us endeavor to avoid it." Mary didn't do this to be seen by men. You remember what Jesus said one time when he was teaching? He says, when you do a good deed, he says, do it in such a way that your left hand doesn't know what your right hand is doing. In other words, don't do it for recognition. And that's what she did. So this woman did this. So what's the reaction? Well, it says the people were indignant, maybe offended, appalled that this expensive item would be wasted like this. Now, in John's account of this story, it specifically says it was Judas was the one who was indignant about the expense. And it was just self-serving, because in John's story, it said Judas said this money, this could have been sold and used to help the poor. He didn't say that because he liked the poor. In John's account, it says he was the treasurer for the group, and he sometimes dipped in there for his own use. So he didn't really care about the poor. So in Mark's account, the woman was criticized. You know, it's easy to criticize someone who shows love to Jesus more than us. We sometimes want to call somebody a fanatic if they worship different than us, if they seem to show their love for Christ more than we do. We criticize them. We're like the people in this story. It's interesting when it talk about it said this is a waste. The word translated waste in Mark 14:4 is translated perdition. And we know that Judas was referred to as the son of perdition. Warren Wiersbe said this: Judas criticized Mary for wasting money, but he wasted his entire life. Judas was referred to again as the son of perdition. Perdition is a noun. It means entire loss, utter destruction, ruin, or the utter loss of the soul. Now, contrast that with words that are antonyms or opposites of perdition, and those are bliss, heaven, and paradise. So we can see the contrast in what that word means there, those definitions. David Guzik in his commentary says it might have been sold for 300 denarii. That was probably worth more than a year's wages for a laborer. Judas pointed out the value of the oil as a way to judge the woman or put blame on her or condemn her for what she did. The disciples thought this was extravagant, it was a waste, but Jesus received it as a good work. And he accepted her simple act of love and devotion. It's possible, some Bible commentators think it's possible that Mary understood what the disciples didn't, that Jesus was going to die. And she did intend this gift as a preparation for his burial. It makes me think of the wise men from the East who came to the house of Jesus when he was a young child and presented him with the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We know the myrrh was a burial spice. This is reminiscent of that to me. Mary had a different devotion to Jesus as the others. Instead of debating or denying or anything, all she wanted to do in this situation was worship him. This was an act of worship. Jesus said, she has done a good work. He said, from now on, people will remember what she's done here today. And Jesus gave her the greatest compliment. She has done what she could. She has done what she could. Henry Ironside was a longtime pastor at the Moody Church in Chicago many, many years ago. And when writing about this passage, he said, God expects no more from us than what we can do, but beware of setting our sights so low that you believe that doing nothing is doing what we can. There can be no higher condemnation than this. All cannot do great things for Christ, but it is well if each one does what he can to the Lord. She did what she could. She gave the very best that she had. What she did was planned. It wasn't spontaneous. She had thought about it. She made a decision, and she acted. It seems like the disciples didn't want to think about or talk about the death of Jesus. You remember right after the passage where Jesus asked them, who do men say that I am? And then who do you say that I am? And Jesus said, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus praised Peter for that response. Just a couple verses after that, Jesus tells the disciples, hey, we're going to Jerusalem. I'm going to be delivered into the hands of sinful men. I'm going to be crucified. Peter pulled him aside and rebuked Jesus and said, no, Lord, surely it won't happen this way. And we remember that Jesus rebuked Peter. He said, "Get behind me, Satan." The disciples either didn't understand or didn't want to face the fact that Jesus was going to die. It seems that Mary understood, and she came to anoint his body for burial. The disciples on occasion would let pride get in their way. You remember on one occasion, a couple of them asked, "Lord, we want to sit, when you get to heaven, we want to sit on your right hand and on your left hand." And this lady asked for nothing. Mary asked for nothing. She gave. Part of the woman's great love was displayed in the fact that she came up with this idea to express love and worship for Jesus in this way on her own. She planned to do it on her own. This oil may have been her retirement security. Okay? It may have been her financial security for the future. And she thought, what can I do to honor Jesus and show my love to him? Is to give him this. She gave no thought to what the response of the other people would be. She didn't think about it. She just acted. She didn't do it seeking praise or approval for herself. She wasn't seeking even Jesus' approval or anything from him. She did it as a sincere act of worship. Most importantly, she gave the best she had. She didn't hold anything back. So the challenge for us is, this passage that happened a long time ago, what's that mean for us? Do we as believers, do we give him our best all the time? I can't say that, and I don't think you can either. I don't always live to worship Jesus. I wish I could say I did, but that would be a lie. I don't always give him the best of my resources. I don't always give him the best of my time. I don't always give him my love. I don't always give him the best of my abilities. What did you do this past week to show Jesus that he's the most important thing in your life? Does it matter to us? Does it matter to him? We used to sing this song when I was young. It's called "Give of Your Best to the Master," and it makes an assumption first that we consider Jesus our master. And I want to read just a few of the lyrics from this song, "Give of Your Best to the Master." It says, "Give of your best to the Master. Give him first place in your heart. Give him first place in your service. Consecrate every part. Give, and to you will be given. God his blessed Son gave. Gratefully seeking to serve him. Give him the best that you have. Give of your best to the Master. Nothing else is worthy his love. He gave himself for your ransom. Gave up his glory above. Laid down his life without murmur, you from sin's ruin to save. Give him your heart's adoration. Give him the best that you have. Give of your best to the Master. Give of the strength of your youth. Clad in salvation's full armor, join in the battle for truth." There's a battle for truth going on in the world. There always has been. It's more blatant now than it's ever been. It's more flagrant now than it's ever been, this battle for truth. We're called to be conveyors of the truth. Worship, as this woman showed, doesn't have to include words. It can be acts. It can be simple acts or extravagant acts. The work that the main work that Jesus said his followers are to do is to believe on the one that God sent, to believe on Jesus Christ. Remember this, that whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Thanks for listening to this today. God bless you, and let your acts of worship this week praise God. Give of your best this week to the Master.